Alright y'all, today we're going to be making a Terror Knight in Baldur's Gate 3. If you don't know what a Terror Knight is, it's essentially a Dark Knight, but it comes from the Tactics Ogre franchise. If this is your first video of mine, I am a huge Matsuno fan, and he has made games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy 12. He had a huge involvement in, but had to leave. Anyways, not the point. And for this channel, we like to make fun, viable theme builds for Baldur's Gate 3. They're not necessarily optimized. We don't like to talk about gear too much. I like to mostly give you the skeleton or the framework of a build, and then obviously items will make these builds even better, but these are perfectly fine without the best gear, without certain, pieces of equipment. So if that's your sort of thing, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We're just a small channel, but we're chugging along. So let's get into character creation. So for character creation, pick whatever race you want. The class we're going to go with is Paladin. For the subclass, we're going to pick Oath of Devotion. I pick Oath of Devotion because I find this one just super easy to break your oath with. We are going to be doing an oath breaker, so we need to break our oath. So either one of these three doesn't matter. It's just how you break your oath is they vary slightly, basically. Background, I'm just going to go as Soldier. This will be a face character, so we're going to look at our stats here. Oh, hi, Puppy. Puppy's here. Not making a Beastmaster build yet. Go lay down. You're becoming quite the little character on these videos. Just coming up and always saying hi. Okay, thank you. Goodbye. Go lay down. All right, back to what we're talking about. Our ability score, our stat layout here. Focus mostly on strength and charisma. We are going to be focusing a lot more on charisma for this build over strength. So that's why we have it at 16. We're going to get a lot of value out of that. Constitution, obviously always important, especially in those higher difficulty modes. And then the rest just in dexterity. We are going to be fixing dexterity with our feats. This is kind of the ability point layout I like to go with. And yeah, now we can proceed to the leveling process. But before we get into the leveling process, so the way I like to structure these videos is we go over character creation, we go through the leveling process, we kind of talk about what you're doing in Act 1, then we move to Act 2, and then we talk about that, the gameplay in there, and then we move on to Act 3, the end build, how this all kind of rounds out, and then a short gameplay section at the end just to show you how the build functions. So now let's get into the leveling. All right, so for the leveling process, once you break your oath, how you break your oath, that's kind of up to you. You can do it really early on. There's the Druid Grove, and you have plenty of opportunities and targets to break your oath as Paladin within there. So it's very early on, probably going to be around level 2, level 3 maybe, depending on how much exploring you do before that. But level 2, we really don't get anything exciting yet. Level 3 is really when the subclass picks up. But so for our first fighting style here, this is our first choice here. We're just going to go with greater weapon fighting. The only thing we really get here other than that is our divine smites. And then for prepared spells, we should probably just go with, I would go with just like a little bit of utility. This class is, or this build is going to be pretty spell slot starved. So you're going to be very conservative on how you use your spells. So focusing on a concentration that you need to reapply in battle may not be the best option. And we're going to have a few choices on concentration skills that maybe not going to be the focus of in the early levels here. But back to picking up our slots here. If we want to do a shit ton of damage, we should use Thunderous Smite. I don't really talk about this enough with Paladins, and I feel like I should, because you do your Thunderous Smite, and then you could have the option to add your Divine Smite to it as well, and it's just a truckload of damage. We'll show that off maybe in the gameplay section, but we're going to pick Thunderous Smite. We're going to pick Bless. That's a nice one to have. Command, always useful. Shield of Faith if you want a little bit more armor. Divine Favor is okay, but it's a concentration that you're not going to get a lot of use out of just because you have it only for 3 turns. But we'll just take it anyways. Really not important. And then we can move on to level 3. So level 3 is where we get our Oathbreaker subclass skills. So we get Dreadful Aspect. This is going to be one of our main, I think, skills in this build. It's really useful. It's a small little AoE around you, usually things that are in melee proximity, and this will basically have a chance to frighten them. And then frighten them gives them that fear effect, and frighten gives them disadvantage on their ability checks and their attack rolls. So very useful. And also they can't move. The other one here, Control Undead. This has niche uses. It's definitely a nice skill to have in your tool belt, but not something that we're going to use necessarily all the time. And then for our oath spells here, we have Inflict Wounds. This is a good spell. This is a good melee option if you want to go down that route. And then Hellish Rebuke. This is a great reaction. The only thing with this is, like I said earlier, we're going to be a little spell slot deprived for most of this build. So using this reaction and using a spell slot, maybe not going to be the best use. Maybe not the best reaction that we want to be using spell slots on. So just keep that in mind. And then for our prepared spells, again, nothing really important here. I would just maybe take protection from good and evil. There's an early on fight that this is useful for. And then we can move on to level 4. And level 4 here, again, these early on spells, up to you. So feat wise, we got 2 options here. We can go with alert, which is going to help our initiative and our turn order problem that we have, because we only have 12. Not the greatest, not the worst, but if we want to ensure that we're going early and first, which is very important in honor mode and tactician, then alert is a great choice here. The other option is Great Weapon Master. If you're going to use a two-handed weapon, which in this build I am going to be using a two-handed weapon, I would be going with the Great Weapon Master here. This is going to give you a flat 10 damage. If you crit or kill a target, then you get to use your bonus action to strike again. It is going to hurt your attack roll, but I think it's worth the trade-off. So that's going to be our first pick, and now we can move on to level 5. So level 5, very important for all our martial classes, for most of them at least. You get your extra attacks. We're getting 2 swings, and then if we proc that Great Weapon Master, then we get 3 swings. So very useful early on. For prepared spells, I would take something like Magic Weapon. This isn't the greatest concentration, but it does help you out a little bit. And in the early game, if you're not utilizing Bless or something to help your attack rolls, this can just be nice. But none of these other things are really that important. Just kind of pick what you want. This is just kind of what I want to go with. And then we can move on to level 6. So level 6 here, we're actually going to forego going more into Oathbreaker, and we're going to switch on over to Warlock. Cantrip wise, we're going with Eldritch Blast. This one is kind of up to you. Minor Illusion is useful, Magic Hand, these are all just good choices, but Eldritch Blast is going to give us a range option. I'm just going to go with Minor Illusion, really don't use it too much. Now you have two choices here. You either go with the Fiend, which is going to give you temporary hit points once you defeat a target, which kind of gives you that Sanguine blade from Final Fantasy Tactics kind of feel, where you hit a target, kill them, and then you get some health back. But in Tactics, you actually just use the ability and you don't have to kill them and it gives you health. But anyways, kind of that same effect in my head. But then also the Great Old Ones. So when you land a critical hit here, enemies around you have to do a wisdom saving throw or they are frightened. This builds into that fear aspect with the Terror Knight, because of a lot of the things that the Terror Knight does in Tactics Ogre is they spread fear. That's basically their one utility, and it's a great status effect in Tactics Ogre, and it's also a great status effect in Baldur's Gate 3. So for spell wise, we're not going to be really focusing on too many spells because again, we're a little spell starved. So for your spells here, you got a couple options. We already get Hellish Rebuke and we already have protection from good and evil, so don't pick those. I would just go with something like Hex and then maybe Arms of Hadar. Again, this is not really too much. We're going to be focusing for our spells is of course Smiting as Paladin. That's going to be our #1 focus, and that we really want to reserve our spell slots for. But this is now where we can kind of stop and talk about the build a little bit, because you're going to be probably finishing up Act 1. So during Act 1 as a Paladin in general, the most things you're going to be doing is just smiting targets. You're going to have great single target damage, and that's what you're going to be. You're going to be frontline and smiting. Now you have the option to use your reaction like Hellish Rebuke if somebody targets you from a distance. You have Eldritch Blast as a range option, so that's really nice. And then in situations where I would say you're in like a range of like melee range of 3 people or so, 3 or higher, I would then use Aspect of Dread instead of using your smites, because then you basically get a nice little AoE a chance to frighten targets. I wouldn't try to frighten if there's only like 1 or 2 targets in proximity, because at that point you might as well just smite them, you know, or just hit them with your melee weapon, because we have Great Weapon Master, and that's going to do a lot of damage. But again, if you have more than 3 in range, I would actually use the Aspect of Dread and just, you know, spread that frighten effect out. So other than that, I would maybe use Hex on a target if you want to hurt their saving throw rolls and do a little bit more damage. That's a great option too. But again, I wouldn't be using too many of your spell slots on anything other than smites. But that about sums up Act 1. Now we can move on to Act 2. Real quick, just moving back to the subclass choices real quick. The Great Old One, I think, fits more into the build, but you do have to, I would say, have to build this kit out to be a little more crit focused. So you're going to want a lot of items that reduce that crit roll number you need. So just keep that in mind with the Great Old One. Where the Fiend, it's just more of an all-rounder. It's going to work for you basically the entire time, because all you need to do is kill a target and then you get those temporary hit points. So just keep that in mind with your playstyle. But for this build right now, I'm just going to pick the Great Old One. All right, and then moving on to Act 2, we're level 7 now. We're going to stick with Warlock here. So a thing I forgot to mention about Warlock real quick, their spell slots, they just scale up and you only get a few of them. So what we're going to be getting with this build is only 2 spell slots, but on short rest, you get those spell slots back. So this is going to give this build a little bit of longevity, so you don't have to long rest as much if you go heavy with using your spell slots, because if you have that short rest, you'll at least get 2 back, and that's better than having nothing. So keep that in mind. So we do have like a little way to recharge our spell slots. But we're going to take level 2 here with Warlock. Spell wise, nothing really important here. Pick what you want. And then these Eldritch Invocations here. So something we're going to want here is Devil's Sight and then Agonizing Blast. So Agonizing Blast is going to add our Charisma modifier to our Eldritch Blast. That's going to be really nice because we're going to be bumping up our Charisma when we can. So this early on, it's going to get a +3 to it. So that's a nice option here. And then Devil's Sight, this is going to let us see in the darkness. Now you can overcome this with picking a race that can see in the darkness, but the race choice is always up to you. If you already have a race that can see in the dark, then maybe Repelling Blast or go with Beguiling Influence, because this is essentially going to be your face of the party. At least they should, because you're going to be focusing on charisma, so they're going to be really good at talking and persuading people. And picking this will just give you proficiency in deception and persuasion, so that's just really nice. Now usually when I do run this build, I'm usually doing a Dark Urge run, and usually when I play Dark Urge, I tend to go on the more evil side, so we're not doing too much talking, we're doing a lot more killing. But if you want to talk to some people, again, this is a good choice pick for that too. But now we can move on to level 8. So level 8, we are sticking with Warlock. On our spells here, we got a few options, but I would just go with Misty Step for that mobility. Something that's really nice now is we have Darkness, and so you can pair that Devil's Sight with Darkness, and basically a lot of NPCs in the game will not know what to do when you're in darkness or they are in darkness. So this can be actually a very handy tool for soloing, essentially. And you'll see in the gameplay section, we'll utilize Darkness and maybe another spell, and you can see how effective just this status effect is in blinding targets, and how it basically messes with the enemies. For our Pact boon here, we're going to be going with Pact of the Blade. So you're starting to see where this build is starting to go. But we're basically just going to be utilizing Bind Pact Weapon. This is just, at this moment, this is just going to ensure that we never drop our weapon. And we're already proficient with it, so it's not doing too much for us right now, but it will a little bit later on. And now we can move on to level 9. Level 9, we get another cantrip. Again, not really that important, up to you. Spell-wise, again, we're being really conservative with our spells that we're using. I would maybe just go with Mirror Image. This is just a nice kind of prep skill. Feat-wise, this is where we're going to take Alert. So now our initiative is going to be super high and nobody can surprise us, which is going to be helpful in Act 2 and for most of Act 3. But now we can move on to level 10, and we're going to stick with one more level in Warlock. And this is where the pact that we just picked, Deepen Pact. So this is going to give us an extra attack. Now the way this works is in Tactician mode, you get 3 attacks. So you know how fighters at level 11, they get that extra attack? This basically will work just like that, but only in Tactician mode. In Honor mode, this does not work. But just know, yeah, in Honor mode, you're not going to get that 3rd attack unless you proc, Great Weapon Master. So then you have potential of, swinging your sword or attacking 4 times in Tactician mode, which is a lot. And we're not even adding in haste or talking about that. So that's a lot of smiting already. And then moving on to spells, we're going to pick Hunger of Hadar. This is a great AoE option, not only because it does a decent bit of damage, but the area of effect that it covers, the radius, is pretty generous, and then it also applies that blinding effect. So not necessarily something you want to be in yourself, but it can cover a room and basically, again, blind all those targets. And then, like I said earlier, NPCs, enemies in this game, don't really know what to do when they're blinded. So if you're going to be getting in the middle of, say, a blinding field, make sure you're just using Darkness, but if not, then use Hunger of Hadar, and this is just a great kind of like lockdown effect. And then we get to pick another Eldritch Invocation. I would just go with what you didn't pick before. So for me, I'm going to pick this, or actually I'm going to take Repelling Blast. This is just a nice push option if enemies are near the edge, and I feel like that's always kind of useful because, there are times where targets are just kind of come up over an edge, you can just push them right back down. So that's always useful. And so now we're kind of at the end of Act 2, and we're level 10 right now. This is where I would say the build is complete. In Tactician mode, this is going to slay out because you get those three regular attacks, and then if you proc that Great Weapon Master, you get that 4th attack. And that's a shit ton of smiting. So that's going to be a huge help here. We do have Hunger of Hadar for that kind of crowd control effect, that option there. And then just basically everything you're doing in Act 1, you can do in this as well. And we got a few more options, obviously. So moving on to Act 3, we only got 2 levels to go. So let's get on to level 11. Level 11, we're just going to go back to, Paladin here. This is where we get our Aura of Protection. This is going to add it's going to add our Charisma modifier to our saving throws. This is just really nice. And I think it adds armor class as well. I don't know. We'll check in game when we get in, because I'm pretty sure it does that too. But then for prepared spells here, again, this doesn't really matter. These aren't anything else here, really, not the focus. And we're just focusing on smiting. And for some reason, it took off my Thunderous Smite, which is a skill that I want. So we'll make sure we have that. And everything else here, it's good to go. So sticking with Paladin here, we're going to go 7 Paladin, 5 Warlock. We get Aura of Hate. This is just going to add our Charisma modifier to our damage. So we're just stacking damage here. So this is just a really nice aura. You can have as many auras that you have up. There's not like, you can't just select one. No, you can have as many as the Paladin gets. So that's really nice. It's a nice stacking effect. And it all goes with our Charisma modifier, which we're going to bump up with a few items, but they're not necessary. And then for your last spell, again, not really important. That's basically how the build, we're already done with the build essentially. We got those 2 extra auras, which are nice. You could go 2 more into Warlock, but I want the 2 auras. Just know that, going 2 more, so going 5 and 7 Warlock, that's an option too. But for this build, we're just going to go 7 Paladin, 5 Warlock, and now we can move on to the gameplay section, and we'll talk a little bit about gear. All right, so for the gameplay section here, let's talk a little bit about gear. So we got the Birthright here. This is the hat you get in Act 3. You get it at the Wizard Tower in the middle of the town. You just buy this. But it adds 2 charisma to us. So that's how we're getting from 16 to 18. But we're also using the Duke Raven Guard's longsword. So this is going to give us an additional +2 charisma. So the way I get this is when you rescue him, you just command him to drop his weapon, you pick it up, and just proceed with that section. I really don't want to talk too much about spoilers, but just know really easy weapon to get here. And it is a longsword, so we're not even using a greatsword because at the beginning, in all these videos, my builds are more fun and thematic and viable as opposed to optimized. Obviously, optimized, you'd want to go with a better sword here. So the Sword of Chaos would technically do a little bit better, but we're gonna stick with this sword here. The rest of the gear here, this is Cloak of Protection. You get this in Act 2 at the Last Light Inn. When the vendor's there, you can sell it there. And then the Blackguard plate here is where I'm just wearing this basically for just so my character kind of looks the role of this Terror Knight. You get this if you follow the murder quest line in Act 3, and that's where you have the opportunity to get it depending on your choices. And then we're going with the Amulet of Greater Health. This is kind of a busted. This is a really good amulet, admittedly. And then you get this again, Act 3, a little bit later on, when you go to hell. but then we get the Risky Ring here. This is going to give us advantage on our attack rolls. You get this in Act 2, Moonrise Tower. There's a Drow vendor. And if you bring Asteria in, you can also get a chance to bump up your stats permanently. And obviously with this character in this playthrough, I have 17, which means I took the Hag's hair for this effect here. But strength we're not too worried about here. Something I forgot to mention about bind my packed weapon here. When we do bind weapon here, we add our charisma modifier to our weapon instead of strength. So strength is actually not that important. Now it's okay for say like jumping and carrying stuff, but with how our weapon scales and which stat actually is affecting that, when you do bind weapon or bind packed weapon, it's charisma for us. So that's why charisma is very helpful with this build, and it also helps with our auras a lot. So we're just basically stacking that out. And as our face character, obviously more charisma, the better. So that's the gear we're rolling with here. It's not super important to have all those things. It's just I'm just showing you that having certain pieces of gear will make this build even better. So after long resting, you got to do a little bit of prep. You have to bind your weapon to yourself. You need to cast Aura of Hate, and then Aura of Protection. And essentially, we're good to go. Now, also, this would be a character class that I would be casting haste on as well. And with all my builds and all my parties, nothing is solo based. It's not a solo build. So with all my parties, my composition, I always have somebody who can cast haste. Usually I call them my haste battery, and that just basically means it's a sorcerer with the twinned meta magic, and that they can dual cast haste on 2 targets, and they basically just sit back in the fight and just stay very safe. I had somebody ask in the last video what a haste battery meant, and that's what I call it. I've heard it somewhere else too, but so I didn't make it up. But yes, so I always have a haste battery type character. And if we want to do a little bit more prep, we could cast Mirror Image on ourselves. We could use our Warlock spell here. Upcasting it doesn't matter, but we can then just go in Short Rest and we get our Warlock spell slot back. Just a really quick correction as well. So Aura Protection, it only adds to your saving throw. It doesn't add to your armor class. And I said I was going to double check that. Sometimes it's hard to remember all these classes and what they do. So we're kind of prepped here. We need to do one more thing, which is just cast haste on herself here. We don't really need it. She's not going to be coming into combat with us. But everything's good. Our timers are going, so let's just jump into the fight. So with the fight here, we got the initiative. We actually got one up on this guy here. So our big target. So we got options here. We got a lot of options since we're going first. Now I always like to bait out the mage here, because mages, there's not a whole lot of mages in the game, but the ones that are their ability to do counter magic is super annoying. So that's probably going to be one of our first targets, but we're actually going to go for this dwarf over here, because he's a pretty meaty boy and he can kind of beat the crap out of you. So we're going to target him first, but we need to bait out that counter magic. Or counter spell, I'm sorry. Get my words right here. So we baited that out, and now we have a lot of options on. So we can get over to the dwarf over here. So that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to cast Hunger of Hadar right over these three. They're not going to know what to do in the fight now. So now they're basically, they're done for essentially. So we can't use Thunderous Smite because that also costs a bonus action. So Thunderous Smites and the other smites besides Divine Smite, they are pretty heavy on the action economy, because a lot of them take action and then your bonus action, and actually the other ones cost a concentration slot as well, that is way too much investment for for one spell. So, but Thunder Smite is just your action and your bonus action, but again, you can trigger Divine Smite with it as well. So this was definitely the only other smite I would use other than Divine Smite. But let's get into taking some action here, and let's take out this guy here. Let's scale this up to 3. And then Illithid Powers, I'm not going to use any here. Obviously in this playthrough I took Luck of the Realms, but we're not going to react. Do a solid amount of damage there, and we're just going to keep swinging because we want this guy dead. So he is done and dusted, and now we can just kind of move off to the side, and we'll just end our turn. So we could trigger Hellish Rebuke here, but like I mentioned earlier, we are kind of spell slot starved. We're going to be going through a lot of resources in a fight. Now this is not a solo build, so like I said earlier, because we're in this encounter alone, we are going to be eating up a lot of resources. But just know in a normal party setting, you can be, again, more conservative with what spells you're using, and you don't have to, like, blow your load really early on to finish a fight. But in this case, we're going to have to because we're in solo. But we're not going to trigger Hellish Rebuke. It's really not that important. We have so much health. And then these guys in the area, in the radius of Hunger of Hadar here, they're not going to know what to do. They're going to get to the edge here. They're going to kind of hit us, but this mage here, they're just going to, they're going to cast their elemental. They're going to run around a bit. They're slowed inside there. It's just a nightmare for them. These are going to keep triggering. That character didn't really count. They don't have that much health. But yeah, now they're blind. They're on the edge here. We got a lot of options we can do. We're actually going to hit them with Thunderous Smite, and you can kind of see how much damage this thing does. I think we're going to be able to. We're going to easily be able to one-shot them. Maybe we should do it on the. They both actually don't have a shit ton of health, so either one's going to die. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and hit him with the Thunderous Smite. Not going to do any of these reactions. The ring lets us do Executioner here, but we're not going to do it. And so we got our initial hit here. The Thunderous Smite didn't hit for that much, only 7. But then we can add Divine Smite on top of it. Knocks him back. Didn't one-shot him like I thought. Oh well. We're going to move around the room a little bit. And now we're going to try to take out this ranger here. And we're just going to keep swinging. We have a crap ton of swings we can take. So since we're getting into... Now since we've taken care of everybody outside of the Hunger of Hadar, we can now just kind of cancel it. We could just keep it up. It'll probably kill them. We'll just keep it up just so you can see how kind of busted this skill is as concentration. It's a really good concentration, but you can kind of see how busted it is and how they don't know what to do. He's just gonna wander around. He's not gonna know what to do. She's gonna keep getting hit. So if they were like a smart player, they would try to move out of it. But again, this definitely messes with their code. So we're actually going to take down. We're gonna take down Hunger of Hadar. I wouldn't if this was a serious fight. I wouldn't do this. I would just let them die in there. But we're going to take it down, we're going to walk in there, and then we're going to use Dreadful Aspect. So you can kind of see how large of an area this is, and since we have 3 targets, I think it's worth it. And we get 2 of them. So they're feared, they really can't do anything. Let's see if we can get... I'm just trying to think who I want to take out. Let's just take out the mage. The turn's over, the fight's over. They didn't even have a chance here. Yeah. they didn't stand a chance. So like I said earlier, this is the build I like to do on my Dark Urge playthroughs, just for that little bit of a morally gray to evil run, because as a Terror Knight you are basically a paladin Oathbreaker that has broken their oath, obviously, and then just spreads fear in melee range. And obviously you have a lot of like necrotic, kind of like dark magic that you can use. So I feel like it fits really well. Obviously you could just call this a Dark Knight, but you know, I'm a huge fan of Tactics Ogre as well. So I wanted to show it a little bit of love. And so yeah, that's the build, that's the video. I got my Poppy here. So thanks for making it this far in the video. If you did, I appreciate you. And yeah, my quick story on Tactics Ogre is I never played it until I didn't do a full playthrough until Reborn, because I don't know, when you get older, you start to realize why you like things, not just you just don't go off feeling. You actually can pinpoint, okay, I like this, this, and this, and you're able to identify certain things you like. And that's when I realized that all of Matsuno games just have that grittiness to them, that amazing world building and writing. Everything's very snappy. It's not really like bloated in that sense. And then obviously the mechanics in the tactical RPG side, I'm a huge fan of. So I didn't play Tactics Ogre till recently all the way through. I tried it a little bit on PSP and stuff, but absolutely love the game. Cannot recommend it enough. I'm so glad they gave it the modern treatment and letting you play it on like console or modern consoles and on PC. Just what a fantastic game. Hugely recommend especially if you are a Tactics Final Fantasy Tactics fan, or I guess Final Fantasy 12 as well. That one's amazing too. Maybe I'll make some builds centered around that. That'd be cool. Give a character some bunny ears and stuff. Okay, that's enough ranting. Thanks for making this far, and yeah, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Peace.